Hey there, I'm Danny Trester from Trester Tailor in Rochester, Minnesota. This is Tailor It Yourself. In this video, I'm going to show you how to shorten the length or the hem on a pair of jeans or other casual style pant. This basic alteration goes a long way to making your clothes fit properly. To shorten the hem on a pair of pants, you'll need a couple of things. You'll want a tailor's chalk and ruler, a scissors, and matching thread for the hem. Some other larger items are a sewing machine, an iron with steam, and an ironing board. The first thing that we're going to do is transfer the marks that we made in our fitting process and make lines that go all the way around the legs so that we know where to sew our new hem. If you're not sure how to fit something, you can watch our How to Fit Jeans video, and that will show you exactly what you need to do to get the proper fit. If you're doing multiple pairs of pants, one thing that you can do is check for a leg difference. Sometimes when you have pants on one hip higher than the other, or you're just off a little bit, checking the leg difference on all the pairs will help to decipher any discrepancies there may be if one is a little bit different than another. You'll kind of get a good baseline so that you can mark them all relatively the same. So to do that, we're going to lay our pants on the table with the side seams together, and basically so that there's a fold on the front and the back of the pant. Sometimes it's helpful if you hold it from the bottom and kind of shake them out. It'll make them lay a little nicer and they don't get a twist in there. So you can hold it by the folds, you can put it back on the table, and then if you stick your hand in the pants, catch the seat seam and hold that centered, you can kind of pull the pants straight so that one isn't pulled down more than the other. And you can kind of feel back and forth. And once they both seem to be laying flat against one another, you can check your measurements there. And it looks like both of these are marked the same. There's no leg difference, but sometimes you have it where it's a little bit off like that or a little bit like that, and that's okay, just as long as all the other pairs are consistent. If you have just the one pair, that's all you really have to go off of. But if you have a really big leg difference, like an inch, inch and a half, you might want to lower one of the whatever mark is shorter. It's better to err on the long side than it is to get something a little bit too short, because you can always take extra off, but you can't always add back on. But for this one, we're spot on, so we'll go with them as marked. So to mark this, we're going to make sure that our chalk marks are nice and lined up. And then one thing we want to do is make sure, you can see how there's a little bit of a taper on the pants. It's a little bit wider up here than it is at the bottom. So before we mark that, we kind of want to pinch this and make sure that the legs are parallel. If we don't do that, there may be a little bit of a peak in the front and the back. The chalk mark may be up a little bit. So if you ended up following that chalk line when you sew that, you'll end up with a little bit of a curve. And we want it to be straight across. So we want to make sure that our lines are one continuously straight line all the way around the pants. Another good way to ensure that you have a nice good line is to make sure that your chalk is good and sharp. If it gets dull, your line's not going to be very clearly defined and you might get some inconsistency. So it's really important that you have a nice sharpen on your chalk. So again, we'll pinch our leg to make that parallel, and then we'll lay our ruler down. And then on the right side of the ruler where our mark is, we're going to take our tailor's chalk and run that down the side of the ruler. And then we'll flip the top leg over and mark between those two legs. And then we'll flip the second leg over and mark on the back side of that leg, so that we have a line that goes all the way around both legs. If we hadn't pinched the leg, this line might be a little bit like this, and we don't want that. We want to make sure it's nice and straight across. When you're marking your hems, it's important not to move them around. I know that I did because I wanted to show you how the lines look, but in order to keep it nice and consistent, once you start marking, you should really leave it flat. So we're going to draw two more lines on here. The second line is going to be for where we roll our hem. And the third line is going to be where we cut the excess fabric off. So originally on this pair, the hem is about 1/2 inch somewhere between a 1/2 inch and 3/8 of an inch wide. I'm just gonna make it a 1/2 inch because that's pretty much the standard for most jeans. So we'll transfer that measurement. We'll mark a 1/2 inch down, and that's gonna be the width of our hem. And we'll do that on the top and the bottom. And then we'll mark another 1/2 inch because that's gonna be the excess that we'll fold under there, and that will also make the rolled hem. If you have a really wide hem, let's say you have 1 inch and this line isn't here, you would still only mark another 1/2 inch to do the roll. You don't need to do 1 inch and then another inch. Sometimes it gets a little too bulky that way. So if you are doing a wider hem, you could mark the inch and then just mark another 1/2 inch, and that will be the amount to roll under. You just want to make sure that you have enough to roll under and that it's not going to come out while you're trying to sew it. It's a little bit easier if it's about a 1/2 inch. So we've got our additional lines marked, and now we'll go ahead and mark those. So we'll want to pinch our leg again and make sure that's straight. So we can line that up with the ruler and we can see that we've got it straight. So we'll move it to those second marks. And again, we'll mark it front side, in the middle, and on the back side. And then we'll move it over again and mark that one last one. The second line, you don't have to mark on the back because this is our cut line, so we don't need that because we'll be cutting all the way through. But if you want, just for sake of practice, you can put it on the back side too. So now we've got our 3 lines, our cut line, our fold line, and another fold line. So this line here is gonna be where our finished hem is. This line is gonna be the width of our hem, the depth of our hem, which is a 1/2 inch, and then this is gonna be our cut line again. So we'll go ahead and cut that off. And I'm cutting through both sides of the pant at one time. And then we'll cut the other leg. If you were only shortening the pants a small amount, like a 1/2 inch or 1 inch, you'll need to take apart this existing hem. You can do that by using a seam ripper or a cutting blade, just to get that open. Because if you're only shortening it a 1/2 inch, you'll need that extra fabric to make those rolls again. So that extra fabric is rolled up in the existing hem. So you want to take that out, clean up your threads, and press it flat so you have a nice clean surface to lay out your marks on and do your cutting. So now that we have this marked up, we'll take it over to the machine, set up our thread, and sew our hem. So I've got my machine set up with thread. I'm just using regular weight black thread because black is what's closely matching this fabric. It's a darker charcoal denim. If you're going to use a heavyweight jean thread, you're going to want to increase the tension on your machine. So you'll want to practice sewing on some scrap material so that you can make sure you get the tension right. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky. You got to turn it up, turn it down, sew a little bit, and also increase your stitch length. So to start, you'll fold it once to that second line that we made. That's our fold line, and this is going to encase the raw edge. And then we fold it again to the line that we made our first mark, and that's our finished hem length. So we'll stick that under our machine and sink our needle. And then as we go, we're going to roll this along that line there to encase the raw edge, and making sure that we have the other line rolled here, and that is our finished hem length. It's most important that you get the hem length line correct. If you get this one a little bit funky, if you don't fold it quite right and it ends up being out here and you stitch out there, that's okay, but it's really important that you don't get off like that because then your hem is not going to be even. So you want to make sure you get this line right on that line. I also want to make mention of where you'll be sewing as you go around the hem. You're going to want to sew just to the right of where the fold is between the light part of the jeans and the dark part of the jeans. Even though we have this mark, we can also follow the markings on our sewing machine. that will keep us going at a 1/2 inch. If you don't have markings on your machine, you can take a narrow piece of tape and just put that on the 1/2 inch mark so you know how far to go. And you can be sure you've got it all even. So following our chalk marks, we're going to go all the way around. When you get to the side seam here, you want to make sure that the folded seam you have here lines up with the seam on the inside of the pant. If you get it too far one way or the other, you'll get the hem twisted and it may not lay evenly. So you want to make sure that you line those up. And again, we're folding along this line and we've got our other fold line here. And as we get back to the inseam, we're gonna walk that over because sometimes it's a little bit thick and we don't want to break a needle. And then we're gonna stitch back a few to secure that. And then we'll just snip off our threads. And we've got our hem sewn up there. So now we're gonna do the other leg. So again, we're starting on our inseam, which is the top stitch seam. Fold that once, fold it again, along the lines, put it under the machine. Follow our 1/2 inch tape mark there. Making sure our seams are lined up as we come to the side seam. If you're using a home model machine, this might go a little bit slowly. They don't stitch quite as fast. Again, as we approach that inseam, we're going to hand roll over that and then back stitch. And now that both legs are sewn up, we'll take it over to the ironing board and give it a quick press. Now that our pants are on the board, we can take the iron and use the weight and the steam of the iron to press that flat, get out any chalk marks that might be on there. Really give it that nice crisp line. Sometimes when there's a pair of pants that has a lot of stretch into it, it can get a little wavy, and pressing that will help it to lay nice and flat. Doing a rolled hem might be a little tricky at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's one of those small alterations that can make a big difference in the way that your clothes fit and how you feel. For more information and courses, including downloadable PDFs, visit our website at tailorityourself.com. And always remember, measure twice, cut once. Thanks for watching.